Hi, how
Donna
you doing?
E.G. Good. Welcome. If you
Thank you.
all are out there now listening live, thank you for joining us. This is episode 2 of Just Chatting with me and my friends. And I'm Donna E.G. Haugen. So stay tuned. If this is something you're watching on a replay, thank you. If you have any comments or questions, please type them. I will not be answering them now because, frankly, I can't do this and read at the same time. I need a monitor or something. So today I am so excited. I have with us a very dear friend of mine, Katerina Lavidas Menoli. And we will just call her Kat today because that's what she goes by. And Kat is absolutely fascinating. She is an American. She actually lives in Greece, but she is here also in sunny Scottsdale on a fabulous lockdown with her 2 teenage daughters and her husband. And she is so interesting, and she's a human potential coach. She runs retreats out of her beautiful villa in Greece, and you can also host your retreat there. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about that later. But today, I just want to introduce Kat, have her tell us a little bit about herself. And we are going to be talking about fermentation because apparently, while she's on lockdown, she's gone deep into the fermentation world. So, welcome, Kat. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome, welcome.
Thank
How are
you.
you?
I'm great. Thank you for the lovely introduction. That was wonderful. Thank
All
you.
right, you
I'm
deserve
doing,
it.
oh, thanks. I'm doing great, actually. When I do something, as you know, I go a little above and beyond, the normal, I don't know, making pickles or, or doing, just a couple loaves of bread here and there. I've actually gone deep into the fermentation process of baking my own sourdough, making my own mother yeasts and starters. I then, have gone on to make my own starters for kefir, yogurt, kimchi,
Pepper,
uh, kefir,
kef, kef,
yeah,
kefir.
kefir, which is a cultured drink. And so, yeah, I've just been kind of doing alchemy in the kitchen and having a lot of fun doing that.
Awesome. And what led you down the road of fermentation? Why did you decide suddenly that?
Yeah, it was a book. I read this book years and years ago by this woman named Alana Collin, I believe her name was, and it was a book that she wrote called 10% Human. And I bought it because I was with my kids in a museum in Greece, and
Mhm.
they were talking about how we are mostly bacteria, and I found that so fascinating. And then this book popped up, and I read it, and I loved. It was her journey. She was doing experiments on bats. And she got deathly ill, and she was, traveling. I don't know if she was in Borneo or where she was, but she was traveling for her studies, for her research. And she went back to America to be treated. And she had this long, this something was terribly wrong with her, so they put her on antibiotics. And she had this long bout of this problem that had gone on for quite a while, and she had taken antibiotics, I think, for about a year, and so she had destroyed her gut biome.
We all know that's terrible, people. No
Right.
antibiotics.
And so
Okay.
she had taken it for quite a long time. So her research then went from bats to germs, and she
Mm.
realized that she had destroyed some of the most valuable uh, germs in her gut that were keeping her healthy and happy, actually. And
Yes.
so and at this time I was living in Greece, as I said, and we are very big into cultured vegetables. We have this thing called tursi, and I remember I always liked these sour things, pickles and sauerkrauts and things like that. And so I started really figuring out how to make my own kefir. And in Greece, you don't just buy packets of kefir starter. You ask a friend or somebody to give it to you. And
Oh,
so
and
I
I
would,
could use some of that, dear.
yeah. And that's the best cultures in having it kind of homemade brews. and
Mm-hmm.
and so I found it really fascinating. But what I found more fascinating was how I felt after I would start my day drinking kefir and introducing more of these cultured vegetables into my diet.
Really quick, is kefir a dairy product? Is
It
it
is,
milk or
and
a
it,
cow
it is,
product?
it is.
Yeah.
But what happens is
Yeah.
these little bacteria are actually eating the the lactase, and so there's a lot,
Okay.
it's a lot more digestible than drinking milk. And I don't drink milk, I'm
Uh-huh.
not big on dairy, because I have kind of reactions to it, so I've stayed away from milk for many years. But for some
Mm-hmm.
odd reason I can drink kefir no problem, and I just feel like my brain turns on, I feel vitalized, I feel um, just a lot better, when I introduce these cultures. And
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, let's talk about the gut. What do we know about the gut? It's our second brain, right? They actually
exactly.
our first, I think. So if our guts are feeling better by adding in these great beneficial bacteria, makes total sense, right? And
Absolutely. I mean, just adding this bacteria alone was showing me that it was diminishing brain fog. It was helping my
wow.
energy levels, go through the roof. I was actually more regular with my, not that we want to talk about bowel movements, but I was a lot more regular. It
Oh,
was
we
just
can
because
talk about bowel movements, people. We all have to poop, okay? It's super important, really
yeah, so
important.
it was helping on a plethora, great levels of, you know, benefits. And so
Did you take probiotics like out of a bottle or
I
anything
used to
like
take
that?
probiotics out of a bottle,
Or
and I
in
have to tell you, I got so confused because you're not supposed to take it with food, or you are supposed to take it with food, and it was getting very confusing, the
mm,
probiotics. Um,
probiotic, prebiotic, enzyme? What's the difference?
exactly.
It's
And then I was
very
spending a lot of money because apparently the really good ones are cold and you buy in a refrigerator. So, those are about $30, $40 a bottle, and you have to continually take them, and not just one a day, several times a day if you have issues with your gut. And I
mhm.
had had issues with my gut my entire life. So,
How did your gut issues manifest? Like, what would your symptoms be
well, I think they
besides brain
manifested.
fog and
It would be
depression?
lethargy, depression, brain fog. I didn't
Mm,
have, depression is a big deal, because
it's a huge deal.
yeah, you don't realize that a lot of the depression can be created unknowingly by us, by eating badly, by taking too much antibiotics, or perhaps in my case, I had taken a lot of Accutane when I was younger, and this
Mhm.
Accutane completely transformed my gut symbiosis, and it made it um, I had a leaky gut syndrome is what I was diagnosed with at 24 years old. And from
Mhm.
that, I had all these other issues. And I was on this journey just to try and heal myself in a way that wasn't taking mass amounts of antibiotics to cure this or to cure that. So, and that became a bit tricky because, in the Western world, everything is, well, you have a problem here, take a, dose of antibiotics and that will help you, whether it's from yeast infections or this infection or that, everything is, you go to the dentist and if they're doing a root canal, you have to take antibiotics. So it's kind of this battle really to
Mhm.
try and stay healthy in a holistic way. So I was introduced to Eastern medicine when I had lived in the Far East for some many years. And I remember when I wasn't well, I had a friend who would take me to the herbalist doctors, and she would say, oh, well, for them it's yin and yang. So it's either heat or
Right.
cold. But all of this also has to do with your gut bacteria as well. And in the Far East, they had a thing called kimchi. And that's where I recognize these fermented foods. They have fermented fish, they have
Mhm.
fermented vegetables of all sorts. And I just immediately felt better when I was eating these foods. At the time, I didn't realize what it was doing.
Mhm.
It was just eating, fast food with some strange fermented vegetables. And over time, it just made sense that when we can kind of manipulate our own gut biome and introduce more friendly bacteria, we actually
Mhm.
feel better because they're kind of like an army for us, and this army,
Mhm.
this our line of defense to attack the bad bacteria because we are constantly battling bacteria. As you can shake somebody's hand who is unwell, and if you have really good immune system and your bacteria is strong and healthy, you won't 99% of the time you won't get sick. But if you are deprived of your good bacteria and you have neglected good eating habits and you are not um, paying attention to these things, you can fall ill a lot easier.
Interestingly enough, I listened about 6 weeks ago. I listened to a podcast, and some famous bacteriologist doctor, infectious disease. And there was a study done. I thought this was fascinating. It blew my mind. So there was a study done, and I don't know, it was Russia and there was Sweden or Switzerland. I should have looked at a map, but it's on the border. Okay. So in this particular town, a lot of the children, like a huge amount, 80%, were getting asthma and lots of upper respiratory infections and diseases. So they did a study. Right across the street is Russia. Well, here in this country, they kept their windows shut, right? They cleaned, places were immaculate. Over the border, across the street, windows open, not a lot of, deep sanitizing and cleaning. And this guy said, look, people, I don't use anything that kills bacteria in my house. I clean with water because it's not bad. You need that. We need to
Right.
keep build our immune system up to these things. And if we just live in a sterile bubble, as soon as we walk out, well, it's just going to
Well,
attack us.
absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I remember, maybe we had this conversation before about our children and with the first child and the second child. With my first child, she was dropping her, they call it biberon, which is the little sucky thing that they put in their mouth, and immediately would go and we would sanitize it. Pacifier, thank you. And then, with her bottles, everything had to be done down to a science, and her clothes were cleaned in a certain way. And I was steaming the house like crazy. And she was completely germ free. She was living in a bubble. And with the second child, I think we got tired of that. So, sometimes if the pacifier fell on the ground, we'd be like, okay, here, stick it back in her mouth. And we were a lot more relaxed. And it was amazing to see the difference in their health and how one was more robust and the other was a little more fragile. And a doctor who was a friend of mine had suggested, look, you need to get a dog because your house is way too clean. And you need to start introducing other bacteria in your home so that your children can grow up to be healthy and strong. And I didn't realize, and in America, we have this fascination with hand sanitizers, even before this virus, that, we were very much into hand sanitizers and just washing hands. And that's great. I mean, I'm not speaking ill about these things, but I think we have to have a balance in how we approach, germs. And that's why, going back to the original question of these bacterias, the good bacterias are just incredible for us, because they're not only do they help us in our immune system's defense, but they help break down, complex carbohydrates that we eat and metabolize all the things in our body that make us healthy and strong. And so I read, or I listened to a podcast about somebody saying, look, now that we have this lockdown and we're all kind of huddled in our own safe environment, right?
We've controlled
our own bacteria. We're going to have a problem now as we enter out and, and start reintroducing this bacteria. And hence a lot of us may get, a bit of a flu or have reactions to that. And that's why I kind of delved into, well, I'm going to try and help my family's gut health and my own by implementing what I knew, worked in the past. And it was a while that I hadn't, I'd never made sourdough bread before. And it's quite interesting.
So where did you get your starter, your mother?
So I made my own mother starter.
You made your own mother?
Yeah. And I did it about roughly a month ago.
And a mother, can you tell people, our listeners, I don't know what's a mother, maybe they don't know what we're talking about.
It's called a starter, a yeast starter. And basically what it is you just take a tablespoon of flour. It could be whole wheat or white. I had white on hand. I bought a big 50 pound bag of King Arthur flour. So I put a tablespoon of that and a tablespoon of water, and you mix it, you put it in a jar, and you let it sit. And
would you recommend organic flour or just whatever you can get
flour,
right now?
Whatever flour, whatever you can get. And that was all I was very lucky to score that bag of flour because there was no flour anymore.
I know you were looking forever.
So, I was looking forever. And so I started like that in the morning. And then in the evening, I just, you do the same weight of what you put in. So you can actually end up having massive amounts of this starter, which I'm putting some in the freezer. I have like 25 jars now in my fridge, and I'm constantly adding and feeding your starter. So it becomes alive, and it takes about a good week for it to start, the bacteria from the air then settles in and it starts to bubble, and you see it has a life of its own. And when it's ready, I mean, some of the best bakeries have starters that are, even 5 years old,
Mhm.
and so they're using it and it's more sour, and and each one of them kind of develops a life on their own. And
Sure.
they have different flavors. You can add different flours if you want. You can have three going at the same time. One can be sourdough, rye flour, another can be just whole wheat, another can be a mix. So it's an interesting process, but it does take time.
So
And
does
what
this mother, excuse me, can you use this? Is this the same one you use for your kefir and this and this and this? Or is this
No, no,
just
no,
for
no.
bread?
It's just for bread. So this
Just for
is,
bread.
yeah, yeah.
So then if you want to make your kefir, what are you using to
So the
and
kefir.
not to give it its germs,
So yeah,
bacteria?
so because I didn't know anybody here in Arizona that had been making kefir, I had to
Mhm.
buy online the kefir
Oh, okay.
granules, and so I use that.
Cool.
But this then is something that you buy once, just like the SCOBY for making kombucha. You buy it once,
Mhm.
and then you just kind of it proliferates, and and it makes itself, and so then and over time, it becomes more and more healthy, and
So, so do you find when you eat this much fermentation, like are you eating 2 or 3 things a day that are fermented? How much are you eating a day? And then my question would be, do you get any gas from it or bloating or anything like that? I know you said that your stools are better, your movements are better, so that's
actually, this
wonderful.
helps with the gas, because what is going on is by
Decreases it.
it decreases it. So what
Mhm.
it is it's helping digest your food.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's really something incredible. And because I'm doing so many different types of fermentations going on, I have the yogurt. I make my own yogurt. I make my own kefir. I make my own kombucha as well. I do kimchi, which is
Mhm.
the Korean version of sauerkraut, which the Germans have their sauerkraut and they have their
Sure.
pickles. The Koreans have kimchi, which is fascinating. And I love all these really strong spices with, hot pepper, and I like the fish sauce. And they also add, some people will add either shrimp to theirs or squid. And this just creates this colony of bacteria, which is just so beneficial for us. If you're lactose intolerant and casein intolerant, you can make water kefir. So it's not subject to only milk. It's just eating the
Sure.
fats in the milk solid. But you can do water kefir. You can do the kombucha. You can do
I
so
love
many
kombucha. It's
things.
my
Yeah,
favorite.
right, exactly. So
So how many times a day are you having fermented products, roughly?
well, I mean,
Once,
because
twice?
because I love food and I love diversity in food,
Mm,
I don't always eat the same thing. So maybe I'll have kefir twice a week. I'll have
okay.
yogurt once a week. I'll have sourdough bread, even though if I make it fresh every day, which I'm doing now. Like yesterday, I made focaccia. I made sourdough biscuits with the leftover starter that I had.
Nice.
It just is
So at
taking
least
over my day.
once a day, you're having
At least
um,
once a day. Yeah.
a fermented product.
And even whey is very good for you, right? So when I'm making my yogurt, I'll separate the whey because I like Greek yogurt. And so what we
Hmm.
do is we sift the yogurt and you make it thicker, and that's all Greek yogurt really is. It's just the solids. And I'll separate the whey, and I'll even have a sip of that, and I'll use that whey to make my sauerkraut, so to make my kimchi. So it's all kind of working together.
Hmm.
And sometimes I'll even sprout beans, and so it will be more easily digestible. I mean, I'm constantly, but I'm not really going overboard in how much I
Okay.
eat it. I'm
So
more
are your
interested in
kids
making
eating
it.
it? Are your teenagers? She has a 15
Um,
and 16-year-old. Are they eating
Not as
it
much as
or
that. They like the sourdough bread, and that's
of
considered a
course, who
cultured.
doesn't?
Yeah, and they love that. So they'll eat the sourdough bread. I made a sourdough focaccia they loved. They'll eat the sourdough
Hmm.
crackers, which has some gut benefit. The best, of course, are the vegetables that are
Sure.
have the highest potency
Or
of.
the yogurt or the
And the
kefir.
yogurt, they'll eat the yogurt. I
Yep,
also
yep.
make these things called Budwig cream. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a wonderful healing recipe where you take your yogurt and you kind of mix all these really good, um, like you can even do brown rice flour, but you can I don't know what you call saraceno. I'm mixing up my languages this morning. I'm sorry, Donna, but you take a
That's
blend
okay.
of really good grains, and you blend it up, even organic oats, and then you add lemon. You add a nice olive oil glug to it, and you
Mm.
mix it up with yogurt, and then you put mashed bananas and grated green apples. My kids love it, and a bunch of
Wow, that sounds good.
yeah.
Is it kind of like a what we would call a muesli,
It's like
maybe?
a muesli, but it's a
Similar?
more healing muesli because
Sure,
you're
sure.
adding the oil to it
Yeah.
and the lemon and the grated green apple, and it's very good for your gut health as well. And I add flax seeds and chia, and
Hmm.
and homemade granola to that, and so that also is very good for your gut health.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so with the bread, I know they say I don't eat a lot of gluten. And but if I do, it would be sourdough bread. And that's the
Well, because
best
the
one
sour,
that you can
right?
eat because it has the mother in it and all of these good
Absolutely.
things.
And it's actually
Mm,
pre-digested for you. So that's why the
nice.
sourdough bread is really, really great. And I don't eat a lot of bread like you. I'm
Right.
really conscious about our diet because I
Yeah.
realized we are what we eat. And so I cured my a lot of my issues with how I was eating. And I eliminated, I don't have any sodas. I eliminated all junk foods, be it
Soda? What the hell's that?
yeah, right. Well, once in a while I would have a Coca-Cola or I'd have a 7-Up or a
Really?
ginger
My
ale. Yeah.
God.
And
Oh,
I would
wow.
look at it as a therapeutic thing, thinking, oh, well, it will help me digest. But that's really not helping you digest at all.
That's death. I'll just share with you very quickly. When I was 19, I literally thought I was going insane. I thought I was schizophrenic. And maybe I was, I don't know. But my mother said, Donna, I think it's your diet. And
Yeah.
19 people, I'm 60. That's a long, long time ago. And I thought I needed to go to a psychiatrist. I was so up and down. I would wake up in the morning nauseated. I got up in the morning. I had coffee and donuts because I worked in an office. At 10 o'clock, I popped my first 16-ounce Coca-Cola. At lunchtime, I had an enchilada at Taco Bell because it was like, 89 cents or something, all I could afford. Then I might have a chocolate milkshake. And I was full all day, super fun, right? And then I'd get home from work, I'd crash. I'd get up and I would be in this fog that I couldn't claw my way out of. And I was actually horrible. I was just a mean person. And my boyfriend said, I have to break up with you because you're like Jekyll and Hyde. And that's when I said, something's wrong with me. This isn't right. So my mom said, oh, no, it's your diet. And I literally went to a chiropractor at the time. He did a hair test a long time ago. He said, your adrenals are shot. He said, you drink
Yeah.
caffeine and sugar, and it's like pouring water onto a raw electrical wire. He said, and that's how
Mm,
you're functioning all day long. And
right.
he was actually doing a study with people on death row, murders, proving that the sugars that they ate were controlling their mind, right? And that they couldn't control themselves. And that was the
Absolutely.
truth. And so, literally, at 19 years old, I put down caffeine. I didn't drink caffeine again until I was 40 when I started coffee again. I put down caffeine, sugar, and all, what do you call those? Preservatives, right? So I became a label reader at 19 years old. And I will tell you, it was life changing.
No, what you said is absolutely right. You just said the sugars, but
Oh,
it's actually the yeast that's prompting us to eat the sugars. So what happens is you've just transformed. You have. I'd like to say it's like these bad bacteria that are in, and we're feeding them what they want, and what they want is the
mhm,
sugar, the bad food, the
mhm,
junk food, and
mhm,
it
mhm.
gives them power. And yeah, what you said about how it made you crazy, there were actually lots of
Crazy.
studies. I think even, I'm not sure, but I'll have to look that up. I think Freud did a study on schizophrenia patients and how they
Sugar.
cleaned up. No, it wasn't Freud. It was somebody that cleaned up the gut, and they were
Yeah.
doing high colonics, and they were able to transform catatonic people who had gone into insane asylums, cleaning up their guts, giving them
There you go.
colonics every day and changing their diet by fruits and vegetables. That's all they were giving them: fruits,
Mhm.
vegetables, and high colonics. And these people went home and they were normal for the first times in their lives. And this was
I'm a believer.
fascinating for me. Yeah. So it really is. And it reminds me of when I was pregnant. I remember I was living in Rome at the time, and I had this acupuncturist, and she was treating me, and she says, oh, your liver is very angry. It's very angry. And that's how she was describing my liver. And I'm like, gosh, how's my liver angry? She goes, yes, your liver is very angry because it's it's the foods that you're eating, and it's still, because I love food, and I know you know me, and I love to cook, and I love to explore
And
all.
she's a fantastic cook. I love to eat her food.
Yeah, and so sometimes I would, eat the fried things and all these things, and their liver doesn't necessarily love, fried foods with the charcuterie plates and nice wines. Living in Italy, we had a ball eating all these um, foods that aren't necessarily great for you. But I remembered, and I always remembered how she would say to me, "Be careful what you're eating because your liver is not happy." And it's true. We have to be really, really conscious and mindful about what goes in our mouth. And so I to this day, I try desperately to have a balance. If I'm going to eat something that's not 100%, you know, healthy, I'm going to balance it out with introducing my cultured vegetables, with my, instead, if I really want a soft drink, I'll have a kombucha.
That's
Because
my go-to.
yeah, if I want something sugary sweet, I'll go and have a 75% chocolate as opposed to, I don't know, something that's not healthy like that. But I do believe in balance. And I think that
Absolutely.
we should allow ourselves, sometimes these forbidden
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. My thing is, I've been craving a cheeseburger and French fries and a milkshake. So actually, last night I did a big grass-fed burger, and I did sort of like these Japanese yam. They weren't fries, but I baked them in the oven, and I got my fix. And the milkshake, I mean, I do my protein shakes with a cacao in them.
Yeah,
So I mean, but if I really want that, and I'll just go get it, and I'll have the cheeseburger, and I'll have the French fries, I'll have the milkshake, and typically I can't eat it all, and that's okay. I get my fix, and I'm down the road. But it's not a normal just go to all the time. But it's definitely
right.
a treat. So
Well, you
I'm
have to
good with
you have
that.
to treat yourself, especially in these days when we feel sometimes like we're kind of being deprived. You have to reward yourself sometimes with the things that will make you happy.
Yeah, some good food. So, and it was interesting. Last April, I think I did the biome test, the gut test, and I was doing kombucha, and I was doing a lot of fermented things at the time. I was doing, I ate really well, organic, and mine came back and said, don't stay away. Actually, stay away from kefir, apple cider vinegar. It literally listed them.
Hmm.
Fermented this. I don't know if it's a cabbage, coleslaw, whatever. So it was very interesting. And I went off of several things at the time, and it worked. I went off the things they told me to go off of, and I literally went off for about 4 months, 6 months. But immediately it turned me around. Cashews was on my list, and no more bloating, no more gas, turned me around. But the interesting thing is, you don't have to go off forever. So now that's
Right,
been a year. So now, I have those things in my fridge now, and I drink the kombucha, and it had told me to stay away from, like I said, the vinegars, balsamic, even the apple cider. But now I'm reintroducing those into my diet. So it's sometimes, I know the thing is, we can't all afford to do a gut test, but
right.
by elimination too.
Right. And by
Eliminate
how you
something,
feel,
add
and by
something.
how you feel. Can I ask you something? So when you did that, did you
Mhm.
feel different when you took that test? Were you feeling a bit off, or were you
Well,
feeling?
yeah. I mean, I did it because I'm a biohacker. So
Okay.
everything I do, and I've been through some major, catastrophic illnesses. So I got really into quantifying, testing all the time, whatever test I could do. And the doctors were testing me all the time anyway. So I went off on that journey. And it's fascinating. So and I've always been into the gut as well since I'm 19, right? I mean, it's been a part of my life. So when this became available and somewhat affordable, I did it. It was funny because prior to it, when I was waiting for the results, I started bloating up, literally bloating up, and I would have gas so bad I couldn't leave the house. I'm like, I can't go anywhere. So I couldn't figure out what it was. And one day I went to the fridge and I pulled out this pesto from Trader Joe's made with cashews. When I buy something, I'm only me, right? So I'm eating a lot of it. I have to eat it every
Hmm.
day or it will spoil. And I pulled it out and I looked at it and I said, this is really something that I added to my diet recently over the past, 10 days or something. And I wonder if this is causing the gas. So literally my biome came in that afternoon, cashews was on it.
Hmm.
Well, I didn't realize all the protein bars, all these alternative foods that I
Had
eat
cashews
were
in them.
full of, because it's creamy and rich, right? I
Yeah.
took that cashew out and bam, my stomach went flat, because my stomach would be flat and I'd wake up in the morning or by like mid-afternoon. And in the morning it's flat. And mid-afternoon it was huge, like
Hmm.
pregnancy huge. Like I didn't know it
Yeah.
could go out that far. Gone. Tomatoes, I had some organic tomatoes, red peppers. I had some kind of a mold virus from
Nightshades.
those.
Nightshades. Yeah.
Well, no, it was a virus they carry when they're grown. It's like called the Pepin virus. I should have looked it up. And I did a lot of research on it. Nothing. The plants get it, modeled something virus. And my daughter had it too. And we shop separately. So what's up with that? A lot of the organic tomatoes and peppers carry it. So I went off of that. And then they sent me a thing. So basically 3 months later, 4 months later, you can start reintroducing it. So
Hmm.
apparently this particular fungus virus in your gut will die out. I do find now though, because I went off with tomatoes and all that for a while, tomatoes and tomato sauce tends to bloat me. So yeah, it's just a test. You know,
So
you eat
it's
something and
fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting talking to you because this is what happened to my daughters when we were living in Greece. They were both gluten intolerant, and so I had to take
Mhm.
them off of gluten and also various other things by the same test that you're talking about. And it was only for 6 months. And both of them now can eat gluten quite well. But this reminds me of how I'm living a bit in America. I'm living in Europe, and I see that there's a big difference in eating patterns and how people eat. And I see that there's a lot more issues in America. I see people have more issues with health in terms of gut health than they do in Europe. And the reason being, or at least what I found, is that we eat seasonally. Now, tomatoes you only eat in the summer in Europe, and you only eat these kind of nightshade vegetables in the summertime. And in the winter, you'll eat more cabbages, more um, like broccolis and cauliflowers, and you just don't touch the vegetables and the foods that are not of the season. And this
Well,
is
that's
also true.
absolutely true.
And this is
Absolutely true.
yeah, and this is also true even with some meat, with fish. Like the fish you'll only eat when the fishermen are going out, and you can eat it all year round, but you'll eat certain fish. I mean, it's gotten down to a science, and I believe that this is contributes to our gut health and how our overall health, and just how we kind of, it's not like, well, we're going to have everything all year round. You're going to have,
Well,
and that's why in the Far East, and in Germany as well, why they're canning their vegetables, because they're manipulating it with these yeast like products, right, that become a
indeed.
bacteria in our guts. And I think I found it all very, very fascinating, and
Well,
why.
it's seasonal eating, and the
Yeah.
way that you can, and the reason that people become sensitive to foods, you're not necessarily allergic, you become sensitive because you're overloading.
Right, and
So
it is
you
a
like bananas,
sensitivity.
you can get bananas 365 times a year, you can do mac and cheese,
Right.
everything. So people have their favorite foods and they eat them over and over, their
And you
body
were
becomes
right.
sensitive.
Right,
Yes,
and you were
so
saying that you were eating a lot of it, being single, you were finishing a lot of it, so
yeah, I
you
was
were.
trying to finish that pesto, but you do eat your favorites. But my daughter is 27, and when she was 2, I took her to an allergist who does a sensitivity test. They put the food in, they use a probe. And he explained all that to me this many years ago. And he said, Donna, if look at what she eats, the same things over and over and over. Her body has become sensitive to those things. So it's
Right.
a rotation diet. So the
Hmm.
way you can do it for an adult is a 4-day rotation.
Right.
So if you have red meat or beef on Monday, you don't eat it again for 4 days. And if you can eat it for 24 hours, eat it for breakfast,
Hmm.
lunch, and dinner, that you're like, if you apple, same thing. Don't eat an apple every single day. You eat it 4 days later. So that's one way, but you're right. People they don't eat enough variety. So become sensitive, then
Yeah.
you have to eliminate it and start
Hmm.
over. But this is so fascinating. So we're going to have to wrap it up, because I know that you people have so much to do out there.
I've got some fermenting to do and baking to do.
Yeah,
Just
I don't know. I'm afraid I'm going to go over to her place and just have her whole family ferment it up in jars, because she's gone crazy with it. But
yeah.
if there's one thing that you could tell us, if we like easily wanted to start fermenting something ourselves, what would be the easiest way
I
for
mean, the
to
easiest
start?
way right now is just to go and get a Napa cabbage and just go on a YouTube, video site and just start doing either some sauerkraut or
Is that where you put
kimchi.
the salt into it? You pour it
Yeah,
and
and
fill it full of salt?
that's a
Okay, that'd be
wonderful
fun.
way to start fermenting, and it's easy. It's
So I
super
want
easy.
you
You can
all
do
to
it.
do that, and I want you to post a video of what your cabbage looks like when you're done. I'm going to try it, but I need to get the
And
salt.
I'll post you some of my starters, which are quite fascinating. I don't know if you saw them bubbling over, but then you can gradually try and do the breads if if that's something that your family likes to eat or you like to eat, or just do the kefir. And super simple, making yogurt, the easiest thing you can do. You can throw it in an Instapot and it'll do it
Beautiful.
for you. So
Beautiful.
just introducing that is a wonderful way to kind of get your gut happy and healthy.
Cool. Well, I know really quick though. Oh my God, we have to talk about Greece. Okay,
Yeah,
Kat Lavida Wellness
wellness retreat.
Retreats. Okay,
Right,
that's Lavida Wellness Retreats.
right.
She's on Instagram, she's on Facebook. She has a fantastic villa. And Kat will be a retreat leader running retreats in Greece.
Mhm.
And or you can rent the whole villa for yourself, or you can host a retreat there too. So if you're a
Right.
retreat leader and you want to bring your participants, your clientele to Greece, I've been there many times. Thank you, Kat. And it's absolutely fantastic. So, Kat, tell us very quickly a little bit about that. It's so
Okay.
exciting.
Well, yeah, it's exciting for us too. We just recently finished building an amazing studio. It's a yoga slash meditation breathwork studio, and it overlooks the sea. And so, as you know, my interest has been mind body health for many years, and I'm introducing a lot of new things this year. Aside from the yoga that we do, we have yoga and breath work, but just kind of overall helping people, especially now after this traumatic experience, I think it's been for a lot of people, to kind of reestablish, reground themselves, and just kind of get back in tune with just nature and rewarding themselves for, you know, I think we've all made some huge discoveries now, and and these discoveries are really, we need to kind of sit back and appreciate what is important, and what is important is our health and our family, and just getting in
Absolutely.
tune with with these important things. And so by introducing people, maybe people do know about all the fermentation, but we always give this food to our clients, and homemade yogurts in the morning and kefirs, but also teaching them just little hacks and ways, waking up in the morning, going on hikes, doing meditation, breath work, yoga. Yeah, we even do Pilates. We go and do meditation in these remote islands and bays on the sea, and just
Beautiful.
kind of, yeah, getting back to being grounded, going on the kayak, and really just being in tune with nature and in ourselves, really, and seeing what each individual client wants. So I host various retreats for individuals that are looking to do
Excellent. Excellent.
something like that.
So, in Greece, you could consider it natural biohacking because you have the energy from the sun, you have the
Right.
energy from the sea and the salt, you have the fresh air, you have limited electronics. You'll be sleeping in sleep
Hmm.
sanctuaries, so you may not have the high tech gear, but you've got a beautiful place for healing and rejuvenation.
Yeah.
And
We're right on the water. I mean, it's
it's
seconds.
absolutely gorgeous. So that is amazing. And you have Kat as well. Yeah. So Kat, thank you for being here. I'm
Thank you.
totally going to try to make something fermented. I don't know what, but I'm going to try it because I'm back onto that. And I'd love to make my own kombucha. I know that you can do that. So
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent. I love that because I don't drink much more than water with trace minerals and maybe some
and
hydrogen
and
in it.
and bulletproof coffee, don't forget that.
Yeah. I do have my bulletproof.
Yeah.
So so much fun, Kat.
Thank you so much, Donna. It was lovely talking to you.
Mwah. Thank you.
All the
Love you.
best.
So thank you for joining us on our second episode of Just Chatting. I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. And if you have any questions, please message myself. Kat and I would love to answer any questions you have about, well, anything. It doesn't just have to be about your gut. And also tomorrow, I believe at 1 o'clock, I will have Alexia on, and she's actually living in Costa Rica. She is a keto coach and a human potential coach as well. And she's quite successful with her clients, and she'll be having loads of information to share with us how maybe you can drop that quarantine 10 that you put on. So see you tomorrow, people. Bye. Bye, Kat.